Welcome to the Hidden Gifts of Lost podcast with me, your host, Julie Trainer. I'm so excited for who I have on my podcast today because seriously, she is like a huge reason of why I started this podcast. She is an end of life doula, but not only is she an end of life doula, she was my end of life doula. She is the woman who listened to my stories for an hour every week after my mom died and just gave me so much love and so much validation and encouragement that I should share my stories. Her name is Roxanne Hanneman. And I am just so excited to have you here, Roxanne. Welcome to my podcast. Whoever thought that I would eventually have a podcast? So cool. We've actually never seen each other. So this is so cool. We did everything over the phone. So yeah, I'm just so honored to have you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Julie. The honor is truly mine. I'm excited. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the world. What you're doing and what you're bringing forth is so important and it's so needed. And I'm so appreciative and honored that you invited me. Thank you. And it is nice to meet you in person
Right?
virtually.
In person. I know. Oh my gosh. And it's been a while. I love the work that you're doing. What you're doing is so needed. I was so fortunate because I knew that an end of life doula was a thing, but not really. I just knew that's what I was being for my mom, but only because of the birth doula thing that I was aware of. But the work you guys do is it's just incredible. How's that going?
I think it's going well. I'm definitely busy. I'm on the West Coast, and there's a lot of changes, of course, in healthcare. So I think while end of life doula work is somewhat new, it's actually been around for about 15, 18 years. And
Hmm.
it's now just coming into its fruition, very much like a birth doula when we birth babies.
Yeah.
People are hearing more and more about it. And an end of life doula is really someone who provides non-medical support and works in conjunction with the hospice and the hospitals, doctors and nurses. And
Mm.
especially right now, since there's such a shortage of personnel and across every realm. So it is really an honor and I'm busy and I'm loving it and it's an honor to be with you today
Mhm.
to
Thank
talk about
you.
death and to
Same.
talk
I
about
know, right?
transition.
I
Yeah.
know. I think it's so important to have these conversations and to bring awareness that it is okay to talk about it and it is okay to feel your grief. And what one of the things you helped me do was really surrender to my grief. And I think if we don't do that, it's emotion. It needs to move, and otherwise it can get stuck, right? And be hard to move on. Not that you move on, not that you forget or get over it. I think you don't have to stay in the suffering of it. You know, do you know Sarah Kerr? You know of Sarah Kerr? She's an end of life doula. Okay. Yeah, I love her. I follow her. And she said something about that. She said, yes, there's pain with loss, but there doesn't have to be suffering. You don't have to stay stuck. And I think that's what you guys do as well, is help people navigate. I didn't have an end of life doula while I was caring for my mother, which would have been amazing. But what a huge gift to have you afterwards to help me with those murky waters of grief.
Thank you so much, Julia. I really am excited about where we are headed, that there's more conversations about death and dying, and where we're headed collectively as a society. And that it isn't when I was growing up. Let me give you a little story. When I was growing up, my best friend passed away and I was 13.
Mm,
Now here's the background on that. Her mom and my mom were best of friends. Her mom was actually more like an aunt to me.
mm,
And then her older brother and my older brother were best of friends. And then she and I were best of friends. She was sick, and we didn't talk about death or somebody dying, and especially with children. And so her death was quite a surprise to me. And I wasn't a stranger. I understood death, but I wasn't prepared for my best friend to pass
No.
at 13. And because I grew up in the country, I grew up with a family in a farming community and hunting community. So I knew about life and death and
Mm.
birth, and that wasn't unusual. But what was unusual is we didn't talk about it. No one did. There was no, at that time, there were no school counselors. The grief counseling wasn't even a thing.
Mm.
It was really, I struggled to get through this. I'm like, wow, what happened?
Yeah.
And I'm going to fast forward then
Mhm.
to my father passed away a couple of years after that. And I'm going to fast forward to my mother's death. And I think that's something that the two of us definitely shared and connected on.
Yeah.
And my mother she wanted to pass at home, but they were in the hospital. They had put her in the hospital.
Mm.
And I come from a large family, so I was really fortunate that my other siblings and I took turns taking care of my mother while
Oh,
she
yeah.
was passing because
Yeah.
she had cancer. And I was flying back into the Midwest to be with her while she transitioned. And I got to the hospital and I knew we had to get her out of the hospital because that was not her wish. So it took the day, but we got her out of the hospital, got her home, got her settled in. And my brothers had not slept for something like 3 days. They were just rummy.
Mm. Oh my God.
And so I asked my brothers, I said, It's okay. I'll come get you. Please go to sleep because mom would want you to rest.
Yeah.
And I sat with her that night, Julie. And as soon as the house was quiet and we were in her bedroom,
Mm.
the house that she and my father had built together and raised their 7 children, the angels appeared.
Mm.
And so I sat with my mother that night and the angelic realm.
Ugh.
And we spoke, but it was like telepathy. And I said to mom, I said, Oh, mom, your sons, I said, they are so tired. I said, Would you please let them sleep through the night? Please don't pass until the morning.
Yeah.
Give them at least until 8 a.m. to sleep. And so I sat with my mother all night and with the angels, and they were palpable.
Mm.
I could see them. I could
Yeah.
feel them. I knew where they were in the room. I knew she was out of her body. And I was caring for her body, wetting her lips and making sure that her undergarments were dry and all of those things.
Mhm.
But then at 8:02 a.m., she passed. Now, my sister in law, the wife of one of my brothers, had come into the room and she was standing at the foot of the bed. And I was standing at the head of the bed at my mother's head.
Mhm.
And she opened her eyes. Now, she had been in a coma, right, for at least a week.
Mhm.
So she opened her eyes as I could feel and see her essence, her soul, her consciousness, by whatever term we use or
Mhm.
whatever term we call it. I
Yeah.
could see it leaving and her eyes opened. And I knew things. I, it was like her bedroom disappeared.
Here. Mm.
I was with her while she was traveling. I had seen different aspects of this life. I had seen her in times of joy and times of sorrow and the miniature life review.
Mm.
And I said to my sister-in-law, I said, "What's happening?" And she goes, "Mom is dying." I knew that.
Yeah.
But my sister-in-law is like, "I'm leaving. I'm gonna go get your brothers."
Yeah.
And so she missed this
Mm.
portion of where my mother
Mhm.
had opened
Mhm.
her eyes. And I was like, What is this?" It was surreal.
Yes.
As I mentioned, my family never discusses death. Come on, Julie. I'm from the generation where we didn't even discuss sex, right? We wouldn't even say the word sex, much less discuss sex. So certainly we're
Oh
not
God.
going to discuss death either,
Right. Death is
right?
even more taboo than sex. Oh
Right?
no.
Truly,
Oh,
I learned about our women's plumbing through books.
oh
It
no.
was
So
what it
you're
was
having this
back
like
then.
luminous experience with your mother, and it seems like that was just meant for you. And then yeah, so then what? How did you and did your brothers and you talk about it after?
After she passed and they took the body to the mortuary and whatnot, family was gathered around. And like I said, I come from a big family. I'm one of seven. I have lots of aunts, uncles. And I had mentioned to the family that I had seen the angels all night.
Mhm.
And it was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. And people were trying to be kind, but they weren't ready to hear that.
Mhm.
And so now we fast forward a couple of decades, actually, and here I am, an end of life doula. And it was after you and I met, because as I'm sitting with people when they're passing, I can often, how do I say this, travel with them while they're transitioning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I ran across this article and I'm like, how did I not see this? I ran across this article about shared death experiences. Now, most of us have heard about near death experiences where
Mhm.
someone, you know, dies and then they come back into their body.
Yeah.
But shared death experience, I'm like, how did I not hear about this for all this time?
Yeah. Whoa.
And so it turns out that actually I Raymond Moody was one of the first true scientists and explored, like his books are Life After Life, Life
Mhm.
After Life and Life After Death. He had done, and other researchers now have done, what they call shared death experiences. And there's a whole host of peer-reviewed research, scientific research about shared death experiences.
That's fascinating.
It
I'm gonna
it
have to read this stuff.
and so that not certainly not every client that I have. I don't have a shared death experience with them, but this world, this universe is full of mysteries. And
Mm.
that's why I'm so happy about podcasts like this, where we can talk about things and open up more possibilities
Yeah.
because it is a mystery. I certainly do not have the answers.
Mm-mm. Me either. Me either. I just like collecting the stories like this. My God, shared death experience. And that's what you had with your mother. And you were able to, what a gift that you have that you were
That
given. And
she gave me in
yes.
transitioning from her body.
Wow. Well, that's
And so
amazing.
and it's a gift too, Julie. It is amazing. And it's a gift that seems to keep on giving
Mm.
because it's not unusual for me to get a call from someone and they'll it's always this, "Hey, can I talk to you in private?" Sure. And I'm not a therapist, by the
Yeah.
way. And they'll say, "Okay, my loved one was passing," or something like, "My loved one was passing, but I could see them standing next to their body. Is that possible?" And
Mhm.
I'm like, "Yes, it is possible."
Yeah.
Or I was with my parent, my dad, and I saw a ball of light come out of his where his umbilical cord was. And I saw this ball of light. Is that possible? It is possible. There's
Mm.
so much we just don't know. And I feel like we are on the verge of, I'm going to say, rediscovering it because we used to birth our babies and bury our dead.
Yeah.
And over time,
Mhm.
it just became so clinical.
Yeah,
And I
it was
think
just
we're coming back
removed.
home.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was like it was all just removed from the home and sterilized. And yeah. Ugh,
And that process of it just being removed out of the home and sterilized, I think has brought so much fear about death. It's funny, I still have not spoken to any of my family members. And I thought, I'm putting myself out there on a podcast. I wonder what they're going to think because I've never shared this with any family member because we still don't talk about death, even though we've all experienced a lot of it. Our
yeah.
our mother, our father, our brother, aunts, uncles, grandparents, but we still, it's not a topic that we would discuss openly.
Even with you, what you with doing what you do, yet you go into the family realm and it's just an unspoken rule almost, it seems. So I wonder what it's like was like for them processing their own grief. Of course, you don't know because they don't talk about it, but I just feel like to have to hold on to all that is it would be it would be hard. And my daughter didn't want to talk about it for the longest time, and she was with me. And after a while, if I even brought it up, sometimes she would just walk away from me. She's gotten a little more comfortable with it, but I don't know. I guess it just depends. Why do we want to talk about it so much? I don't know. I just find it fascinating. And yeah, that was my first death, but and there was a lot of fear around it for me in the beginning of the whole 10 weeks, just because in my family, we were not emotional. It was that we were not, well, we were raised in that generation of if you cry, I'll give you something to cry about kind of thing. So make
I
sure you
heard that too.
yeah, like, don't make a sound. But yeah, and I was so afraid of the emotional part of it. And then, and even right after she died, my dad and I basically sat in silence while we waited for the mortuary to come. We said, "Oh, it's good she's not suffering." We said these little the things you say, but we weren't hugging, nobody was crying, so it was this weird, I don't know, just void,
Mhm.
really. That was uncomfortable. But that was my dad. He wasn't open to talking about things like that either. And you think about, I don't know, generational trauma maybe just makes people not feel safe to let their emotions show. But I love what you said about we're returning. I feel like there's a lot more conversations happening around death now. I've always watched those NDE stories on YouTube, and there's been some TV shows about end of life and yeah, and the end of life doula movement. Like what a gift. Like we need that because it's like hard for hospice. They have so much to do. They don't really have time to sit at the bedside. That was my concept of what hospice was going to be like because my grandparents had that. And I wasn't really there. I popped in and out while my grandparents were dying. But I wasn't like with them, you know what I mean? I saw them near the end. But I remember every time I would be there, hospice was there. And they seemed to just hang out for hours, right? So then you fast forward to COVID, they popped in for an hour in all the personal protective gear, and then that was it. There was really like no support. So to have had someone like you during that process, oh, that would have just changed everything in that setting. But nevertheless, to have had you afterwards was just so incredibly healing for
Thank you,
me.
Julie. I truly have in my lifetime seen so many changes. We freely now talk about sex and sexuality. And I think that, as we've already mentioned, that the whole conversation around death and dying is really changing. And actually, it's changing rather quickly. And I know here I'm on the West Coast, and I know here on the West Coast, we're seeing a lot more home funerals and just seeing the whole industry kind of change and relax a little bit and
Mhm.
take that clinical process out of it. So,
Yeah, I know that they have the green burials
yeah,
now and the assisted death, assisted suicide, whatever they call that.
right.
Personally, I feel like that should be an option in certain circumstances when there's suffering, and that's one of the hard things I think is the suffering that some people go through at the end with cancer. It was it was a short process, but at the same time, at the time, it felt like it just went on and on. It's like, how much longer is she supposed to go through this?
Mhm.
And then you feel like you can't you this is a good question for an end of life doula. You know how people I feel like people don't know what to say at the time of loss. And what I found was I think people think, "Oh, I'm afraid to bring it up. I don't wanna make them sad." But I feel like we're sad anyway, and I don't know if you find this, but I find that people wanna talk about their person. And so I think opening that up, "Tell me a story about your dad," kinda thing, which is what I like to do here on my podcast. Do you find that to be true with maybe not your family, but the people you work with?
I do find that to be true. I really find that the questioning, like you said, an open ended question. So tell me about your family. Sometimes just being silent and holding the silence for people, or walking up and allowing them to cry. Sometimes putting your arm around the person is the right thing to do. Sometimes putting your arm around the person is not the right thing to do. But it's allowing them to go through their processes. This is their family, it's their collective journey. And it is truly a sacred honor to be invited into that process and to be allowed. It's not about me, it's about them. And so, what can I do to help support the family? And sometimes, yes, it is asking questions about, tell me a story, or looking at the family photos, or helping them put together something that's meaningful and memorable for them. It may be a photo collage or certain things, certain rituals that the family has had, and just certain things that they do and have always done. And so allowing that and perhaps making the suggestion. Another thing is in that allowing is it's okay for different family members to be angry. It's okay that there's conflict. And our society doesn't feel comfortable with conflict or if two family members are disagreeing with one another. And that is perfectly acceptable. Now, as an end of life doula, I'm not going to get in the middle of it,
Mhm.
but I can support each person because each person is coming from a unique perspective. No, no two people, even if they had the same mother and father, had the same background, had the same exact same relationship.
Mhm.
Each one of us carry that very personal relationship with our loved ones and our families and our friends. And each relationship and each death is unique. And I think part of what is a challenge for us is it makes us face and realize we too one day will transition. And I think that's really scary for people to think, yeah. You hear about people not wanting to do the paperwork like advance directives, wills, and those kinds of things
Mhm.
because it's scary to really think, I am going to transition one day.
Mhm.
And people
Yeah.
don't want to really take that in. And
Mm-mm.
fear is a big part of it. So navigating through that fear is really a real critical component in helping families.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so true. They don't want to have the conversation. I have a friend whose mother was in Florida and she was very concerned about the hurricane potentially hurting them. And she was offering, I should have access to this and that information. And her mother was just, no, why do you need that? We're fine. Right. She couldn't even have that pre-conversation because I think it made it too real for her mom that something might happen. There's a hurricane coming. I think that's a really important thing for people to know is that have those conversations ahead of time. We were so fortunate that our parents had done the pre-arrangements. All of that was taken care of. So when it was time, we just made a phone call and that was it. She was cremated. And my daughter's boyfriend's mother passed, and none of that stuff had been taken care of. And the whole financial burden fell on them to try to figure out what to do. And you can do a lot for your loved ones if you are willing to have the conversations
Yeah.
ahead of time. And when if it's difficult, we've got end of life doulas that can help. And I don't know what some people will reach out for the help and some people won't. I don't know. How do people find you? How does your process work?
I pretty much I'm in a very rural area.
Mhm.
So people know of me for the most part, actually, Julie, word of mouth. I don't even have a web page up yet, although
Mhm.
it's my intention to get one up probably after the first part of 2025.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just basically I've worked with hospices. I've got
Mhm.
hundreds of hours with hospices.
Yeah.
And because it's a small community, people know me through word of mouth. And so that's
Mm.
how my process has worked. And I do get a lot of phone calls with questions.
Yeah.
And I welcome people to call me with questions and let's sit down and talk about it over the phone or something like video services such as Zoom.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then that leads to another. Oh, I know this end of life doula because we're seeing there's a gap in healthcare. There's just not enough people. And so families are needing a break. There's that generation that's in what I call the sandwich generation. Mom or dad are at home and maybe they have a bit of dementia, but I have little kids and we would like to go away and just take some downtime. Can you come and stay with mom or dad?
Mm.
That's what I'm seeing a lot of at this point because there's just not enough employees in home health care and in hospice. And as we've mentioned, any industry really these days.
Mhm. It
Yeah.
seems since COVID too, I think a lot of people left healthcare because, yeah, you would. It must have been so overwhelming.
It must have. I can't imagine what they went through.
No,
And they're angels in their own right, to
yeah,
be
they
sure.
are. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm, I love that. It's just word of mouth in a rural community. That seems so organic. Just, I don't know, like the way that it would have been 100 years ago, right? Or in ancient times. You're the medicine woman kind of thing, right? But not with medicine, but like the emotional medicine that is, yeah. Do you more work with the family or with the dying person, or does it just depend?
It really is, it depends. And it depends upon where the family is in their process. I'll work with families early on in the process. Like I said, somebody needs respite care and they just need to get away for a day or a weekend.
Yeah.
But actually, mom and dad are still okay. They can still basically bathe themselves or shower and or cook. And so everything from that to sitting vigil.
Mhm.
And it really is amazing. I when we get to the vigil aspect, I do often see the angels, the angelic realm in the room. And it's becoming what I'm noticing here is people are becoming more accepting and more, yeah, that's a possibility that there's an angelic realm. We're starting to talk about it.
Mhm.
But still, most of my clients, even though we're talking about it, they want to do it behind closed doors. So don't tell anybody. And I get that. And I think that's, especially being in a small community, confidentiality is key. Just really keeping things confidential
Mhm.
and being very aware of everything I say, no matter if I'm just buying groceries in a grocery store. So that confidentiality is a key to being a good end of life doula, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
And letting that family know that wherever they are, meet them where they are. Wherever
Mhm.
they are in their process, allow them to feel comfortable and not judged, and just being very aware of how we present ourselves. A lot of our training was actually, I loved my training. It was a mixture of your aspects like anatomy and physiology. We were required to study all the major religions of the world.
Mm.
And then we were required to study how the body shuts down, depending upon what the disease is.
Mhm.
We were required to study how the brain functions when somebody is shutting down, and things like how does essential oils and smells affect the process. But we were also required to take a listening course and to really see ourselves on video on how well we listened or maybe didn't.
Mm.
And it was fascinating to see how even something like fidgeting with an earring might send a communication that the person isn't really being heard.
Mm.
So, that listening component, listening, I call it listening with our hearts. And all of us can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have a very special heart. And you're creating a sacred container really for this to happen and holding that space. And when we're in grief, we need that. Having somebody that's not caught up in it, not in the family, not part of the family drama or what have you, to hold that space and that peace. That's so important. And I think so many people don't have that. So I love that it's becoming more known that these resources are available to people who need them. And you said something else, and now I've lost my train of thought.
I do that all the time.
I know, but the angelic realm, yeah, that I believe those things are absolutely real, and our society is just I don't know. But no, you have experiences like that, and you just know. And when you see that, do you if you're well, you probably just read the room, right? I mean, if you know that the family is gonna be like, "No, this isn't okay, I don't wanna talk about that," or do you share that with them and then they're comforted by it or just I don't know, I'm just curious.
You know, I get to know my family really well.
Yeah.
And I most people these days, what I've been discovering is different family members will come to me and just want to talk privately.
Mhm.
And then for some reason there's this energy that just kind of flowers and opens up.
Yeah.
And it does help them when I share with them collectively and individually. Okay, been, I have seen angels,
Yeah.
and I share with them perhaps my mother's story.
Yeah.
Or I had an angel when I was in the hospital once. I was in the hospital with a gallbladder issue, and the doctors were deciding if I needed surgery or not. And an angel entered my room to give me the message that everything would be okay. Because, of course, I was scared. My family was away, so I was by myself. And when you're in the presence, I could see this angel. It was presented itself as a female.
Mhm.
It's so loving. It's so kind. It is, I cannot really in any words that I can think of, describe what it feels like when you are in the presence of angels. It's so calming.
Mm.
It's surreal, but yet you still know that you're in your environment. I still knew I was in my hospital bed. I knew I was sitting next to my mother.
Yeah.
And yet the love, the absolute unconditional, no judgment, no fear, it's
Mm.
like it just dissipates and
Mm.
it doesn't exist.
Mm.
And it is so amazing.
Yeah.
No words can describe it. It's an
Mhm.
experience that I want everyone to experience. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I love that. I had an experience like that. It was right after 9/11, and my friend was visiting, and we were outside, and we were sitting in my hot tub, and we both saw this almost like geodesic dome grid in the sky, and it had been, like, perforated. It was right after 9/11, and we saw repair work going on up there by angels, and then I was visited by an angel who came from behind, and she just stood over me for a minute, and it was like she was my higher self, but she was also an angel, and yeah, I saw her. I saw her, it was palpable. She was there, and the fact that my friend and I both saw this grid was just because we can't always see these things, it doesn't mean that they're not there. I believe that it's right next to us, and I have felt that with my parents a lot since they've been gone. There will be things that will happen where I just absolutely know that's my mom. She's here, she's saying hi. I believe that they are part of this work that I'm doing. There was a j okay, so this is interesting. Okay, this was a while ago when I was feeling really sad one day. I just needed to go into the woods and be alone. And while I was walking in the woods, and I was all alone in the woods, it was twilight, it was great. Nobody was there. I would cry in the woods all the time because I wanted to be alone. I heard wings. I heard the air moved by wings, and I'm like, "Ooh, what was that?" That sounded like a big wings fan. So I very carefully approached, and then I see this owl on the ground. And when it saw me, it went up into a low branch, but it didn't fly away. It just alighted on this branch, and it allowed me to approach. And I got close enough to the owl that I could see her eyes blinking. I'd never seen an owl up close. And this was a day when I was missing my mother so much. And there was something about the way that the owl had the big eyes, and it looked like she had a headscarf on, which was my mother in the 60s. So yesterday I pulled some cards. I have a lot of different tarot decks, and I pulled some cards, and I had woken up, and I had just a little bit of anxiety because I have this TEDx talk coming up, and it's about the hidden gifts of loss, right? And I thought, I can just call on my ancestors for help, right? So I pulled this card, and I have to show you. It's hard to see this stuff with my fake background, but look at this card.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. How exciting.
It's this owl with a book reading to this girl in the woods. And I've looked
Oh,
at the cards through this deck, right? But I never saw that one until yesterday.
oh, isn't that just exciting?
Yes.
Amazing?
Yeah, it's
You
so
know
great.
that
Like
it's beyond.
that is them communicating that they're here. They're just not in a body anymore. And that's really comforting, I think. I know it's comforting to me. I'm sure it's comforting to a lot of people. And I find that a lot of people really do believe that and do have those experiences where coincidences like that will happen. It's just so beautiful to get to experience that realm and what I call these hidden gifts. And I think the more you're open to it, the more you get to experience it, the more you're going to see it and feel it.
There, I think you made a very good point, Julie. That's really important if you're open to it. When we're in the middle of a heavy grief, it's hard to be open. And I'll hear doctors and nurses say this all the time. They can walk into the most horrendous of accidents or what have you. emergency medical technicians, and they just know what to do. They're trained. I don't know if saying put their emotions over here is the right thing, but they're on automatic.
Mhm.
And yet they'll all say, except when it's my loved ones, then they cannot be objective. And I don't think any of us can be. And that's why just being there for each other, an end of life doula, a friend, a family member, sometimes even a stranger who can hold that space and just allow so that heavy grief has a chance to dissipate and move through, because it causes so many diseases if we hang on to it. Grief and anger and just the whole collective of emotions that we feel when we're in the process of loss.
Mhm.
And right now, our society is changing a lot. We know about the hurricanes and whatnot. There's a lot of loss in many areas. Our businesses are changing. There's a lot of loss and there's a lot of grief.
Yeah.
So, if each of us can hold that, I think it will be held for the collective and honored. And therein lies the key, is honoring.
Yeah, it is. It's all about holding that space. And you're right, it can be a stranger. And that's exactly what you did for me when I was grieving. You held that space and it's sacred. And it gives that person almost permission to be like, okay, I can release this now. And yeah, otherwise it does cause disease. That stuff's going to manifest in your body if you hold on to it. So that's why I even see grief itself as almost a hidden gift because if you can surrender, it's healing, it's
Right.
cleansing. And you said something so beautiful to me back then when we were talking, and you said, your mom is worth every tear. And I remember that. I've always remembered that. Yeah. And I used to see when those waves of fresh grief come, that helped me see that, okay, she's here. She's saying hello right now. And this is just what it feels like right now when she moves through me. And then I was okay with it. And it's been 4 years now, and I'm not in grief anymore. And I think part of the healing again was now I'm holding space for people, not as an end of life doula, but as a grief podcaster, right? But that's so healing to do that. And I've had so many people come on and they've said, I've never told anybody this, or I've never shared this entire story from beginning to end. Yeah. And it's such an honor to do that for people. That's a gift in and of itself. People will say, oh, you've given me a gift. And you've given me a gift too. So it's mutual gifting. It's just beautiful. Oh, I
It
just,
is.
my heart is just so full talking to you. This is such a full circle thing for me because you I remember you saying your stories are like the moth, and I didn't even know what the moth is. So the moth radio hour, and I thought maybe I should do that. And I actually last year on my birthday, I actually did finally do my moth pitch, and I didn't hear from the moth, and that was fine. But I did it, right? And that was like, okay, I'm all nervous. I'm gonna do this, and it was my birthday. And then I was like, okay, I'm not gonna wait for that. I'm gonna do the next thing, and then the next thing I'm gonna create my own platform. I'm gonna have a podcast, and it's just been amazing.
That is amazing. And and I'm so excited because okay, maybe you didn't get on the Moth Radio Hour, but here you are. You're preparing for a TED Talk. That's huge.
So huge.
So
And
huge.
I was so surprised because but it validates that this is something we need to talk about, and that not enough people are talking about it. But I do love that more people are talking about it than there were before.
I hear that, and I do too, Julie. But I also want to touch back on your story about the owl and your mom. I think that is such an important component. These, oh, we call them synchronicities or coincidences. But are they? I think not. I think it is. There's mediumship where people can communicate with those that are deceased. And I think really it's a transition out of our body. We're done with this garb that we've been wearing for
Mhm.
X number of years, and we're transitioning out of it to do our new journey, our new life. But yet they can still hear us. They still feel our emotions. And so they're reaching across what we call the veil, which
Mhm.
to me, I think the veil is our body, to
Mm.
communicate, to console us because they love us and we love them. And so when we see that synchronicity about owls, what a beautiful story. And I hear so many similar stories to that. And that's a common phone call that I'll get. Somebody will say, I don't want you to tell anybody. But every time I think of my loved one, my mother who passed, I see this particular yellow butterfly. And this area doesn't have those yellow butterflies. Okay. Or the owl, or whatever was meaningful.
Yeah.
And there's a host of research out there now about, and a lot of good books about people who communicate from the other side of the veil, the people who, the souls who have passed on, how they reach across and learn to communicate with their loved ones when their loved ones are ready and open and
Mm.
not in such heavy grief.
Mhm. Yeah, you can shapeshift into an owl. I had gone into the woods very deliberately that day. I was just like, I need something. And she showed up. And it's funny you said about the butterfly too, because my brother and I started seeing a lot of butterflies right after my mom passed. And one actually just walked right up on my brother, right up on his leg, and just sat there for the longest time. And when I was recently in California, we were able to see their house, and the new owners had completely renovated our parents' house. And it was incredible. It was such a catharsis and a healing because I always wanted my mom to just have nicer things. And she was we're just going to make do with what we have. And this is good enough, kind of just a different mentality. And this young couple just, oh, what they did to this home. They didn't even change, they didn't add on. They just made it so beautiful inside, and they made the yard so beautiful, and they put new siding on and everything. But when we first got there, and I've made a point of staying in touch with them because I wanted to see what they did with the house. So I had sent them a card welcoming them to their new home and just kept in touch like on Messenger and just, hey, how's it going? How's the progress? And so anyway, we get there and we finally meet them for the first time. And immediately she tells me they hadn't moved in yet, but they had finished the renovation. She said, whenever we come over, there's a butterfly at the front door. We
Oh,
just say, hi, Nancy. We know it's your mom.
oh, that is so beautiful.
And that is so her.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, so just those signs and symbols are everywhere and they're not coincidences. That is a way that they're communicating with us. They can do this stuff they're on the other side. They can do stuff that we don't know how to do it yet. We will one day, but I always yeah. And I think people can just let that be a comfort when don't second guess when those things happen. Yeah, that was her. That was your dad. That was your mom. Yeah, they were there. And we hear so many people tell those stories that it's just it's real. It just is. Oh,
And I don't think we're meant to be able to explain everything. I think life is meant to be a mystery. I think
mhm.
it's meant for us to get up. And I know for me, I think of like birthdays. I don't think of one day a year. For me, every day is a birthday. When I get up in the morning, and I'm a morning person, I love seeing the sunrise. I am birthed into a new day. So my birthday is now, it's here, it's this morning that I'm getting up. Yesterday is gone. Today is full of love and full of potential. What am I going to do with this birthday?
Love that.
So every
Yes.
birthday is a celebration.
Yes.
365 days a year.
I love that. Every day is a birthday. Yeah. Those are words to live by. Wow. Yeah, my on my birthday is Sunday. I'm gonna be 60.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, but I love that. Every day is a birthday. You woke up. You're given another day. That is a birth. That is beautiful, Roxanne. Thank you.
And when I transition, that'll be a different type of birthday.
Exactly. I think of it like it's a portal, just like birth. We came through this portal and then we have life, and then death is a portal. And I see that grief is a portal too. You go through it and it's, maybe not enjoyable when you're going through it, but then if you do, you come out and it's a new day. It's a new kind of life. It's a life with more awareness of how precious life is and how fleeting it is, and how, yes, every day is a birthday. Every day is a gift. And I think when we can see that and live that, it just makes life, yeah, so much richer and more beautiful and more authentic. You're such a gift. You are, Roxanne. Just so amazing to get
Thank
to
you.
connect with you again.
And you
And
know,
thank you.
it reminds me of, I don't know, a day or so ago, I'm an avid reader. So I have a lot of books and I was moving a pile of books. And one of these books was a book about angels. And it just flopped open and it said something like, it was a Lily Tomlin quote. And she said something like, and I may not have this 100%, but it was like, why is it when we talk to God, it's considered prayer? And yet, when God talks to us, it's considered schizophrenia. It just cracked up. Lily Tomlin was so
Oh
funny.
my God, she is.
But when God talks to us, it's considered
It's
schizophrenia.
schizophrenia.
I'm like, yeah, really.
How can somebody find an end of life doula? Not if they live in your community, they're very lucky. But if they don't, in general, how can somebody find that?
The national end of life doula is NEDA, NEDA. So put that into your search engine, NEDA, and that's national, cover everywhere here in the United States.
Okay. Great.
International end of life doula organization is called INELDA, INELDA. I would say probably most end of life doulas are members of one or both of those organizations because they are the key organizations that set the standards both nationally and internationally for end of life doulas. So
Okay.
that's what I would recommend is doing a search engine for NEDA,
Mhm.
NEDA, or INELDA, INELDA,
Great.
and that'll
Great.
connect.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on today. Just been wonderful to see you, and happy birthday.
Thank you. And you too. Happy birthday. This conversation has been healing. It's been magical. I really appreciate all you're doing, Julie. And
Mm,
I'm happy for you and I'm happy for the world because we need this.
thank you.